I'm going to be ranking Overwatch 2 tanks in Season 5 comp, in which tanks are meta and which ones are not. First up is Zarya. Zarya is a good character, very versatile. There's not a lot of characters tank-wise that can match up to her. Probably the best tank not getting counter picked, because there's not a lot of counters between Zarya. The only one that I can think of is probably Winston, because you can like dive past Zarya with Winston. Very reliable pick. And if you want to go to the safest option, I'll go Zarya. There are some bad maps that doesn't pair well with her. I think Zarya is probably the most comfortable pick out of all these tanks that we have here. For reliability, makes her go up higher on the list than what she would be. In lower tiers, is probably the best tank, because not a lot of people just keep shooting the bubble, which, come on now. So I'll give her a B. Very solid pick, very comfortable pick, very reliable. Probably the most reliable tank in the game. And for that reason, that's why I'm going to put her in B. Next up is Junker Queen, which in Junker Queen, in the recent update, she has been nerfed. Her shout went from 200 to 150, and her Rampage Ultimate cost 15% more. But still, it's a very great character, very team-based. If you have a good team, good heals, very solid pick to play. But even with the nerfs, I still think that she's still insanely good and probably one of the best tanks in the game. With Junker Queen, you need a team that is willing to stay with you and go with you. Not a lot of people don't know how to do that. Not a lot of counterplay. She do have some weaknesses. Going against Mei is one of them. It's very annoying to go against a Mei. And Zen Discord Orb is very good against her. That's probably the only counters I can see. If you want to climb up ranks quickly, Junker Queen is the way to go. Junker Queen is really good. She's very powerful. If you play with the right team, it's hard to unchallenge the character. Very, very good. So I'll give her an S tier. And I think Junker Queen is probably the best character to be playing right now as of Overwatch 2 Season 5. And with Junker Queen, it's a very good carry character. I've seen it multiple times where a Junker Queen can carry a whole team on her back. It's a very good character this season. Next up is Orisa. I think Orisa is a very fine pick. Very lukewarm. It's a very fine character. In certain cases, it's very good. But there's a lot of things where you can punish her on. For one, her head is very big. She got a very big hitbox for her head. And if you go against a Hanzo or anyone in that field, like a Widowmaker, to hit headshots, very, very, very bad. I think if you play very disciplined with Orisa, you can neutralize the tank. Orisa is a very safe pick if you don't know how to shut down the enemy's tank. It's a very safe pick. Orisa is not no meta character in any means. I think Orisa needs a slight buff to get her into the playing category when there's other tanks that can do her job but better. So in that case, I'm going to give her a C. Next up is Reinhardt. Reinhardt is a very powerful character. The problem I see with Reinhardt is I can't see any matchup where he has an advantage in. Because I think there's a lot of matchups that abuses him. A diva could completely avoid him. Several dive characters can go past him. Sema can poke him out. Ramatra can poke him out. And in some cases, Junker Queen can beat up Reinhardt in a straight up brawl. This doesn't mean Ryan isn't good. It's not a bad pick at all by any means. It's just the higher rank you go, you get punished. And it's way harder to play him because the tank's gonna be avoiding you because they're not gonna get close to you. Whenever it's a very disadvantage like that, when you're a character that can only play close range and you can't play far or you can't play medium to long range, you can only play short. That's a big disadvantage. And in that case, I'm gonna put Reinhardt in B. Next up is Diva. If we're gonna be talking about the top tier in comp, Diva is probably going to be an S tier. She plays very well with DPS, and she's really good at completely shutting down characters like Cassidy, characters like Hanzo, characters like Ashe, which all of that is a plus. But every map is going to have high ground for you to abuse. There are some brawl maps that is not good for Diva, and a lot of poke maps is not very good with Diva. On a map where you have high ground to abuse, she is the best pick to choose. But there's not a lot of maps that has high ground to abuse. So in that case, I'm going to put Diva in A. Next up is Roadhog. In the most recent update, Roadhog has been buffed. Now amplifies healing received by 50% for 2.5 seconds after finishing Take a Breather. Which that means he's more likely to survive, more likely to get healed. He doesn't have a whole lot of one-shots, and he's just like a big old hitbox. He's just a big old punching bag walking around. Anybody can hit it, a big old hitbox. But even though he gives them less ultimate charge when you hit him, it doesn't matter whenever you repeatedly hit him over and over again. There's so many characters that can completely shut him down, like Ana. And there's multiple characters that can avoid his hook, which his hook is basically his main item that he has. And I'll put Roadhog in D. He's not any better with the buff at all. I think that he needs a lot of work done with him, a very lot, just for him to be meta. And any time in the future, I don't see him becoming meta unless them changes happen. What Roadhog is good at is grabbing a character and throwing them off the map. Very good with the hook in that case, but there's not a lot of maps that you can do it in, and plus you still got to get next to that hole or the outside just for the character can fall. Next up is Sigma. You already know where I'm going to put Sigma at. He is an S tier tank. There's a lot of maps where he can play in and be highly efficient in. He plays really well with Hanzo, Cassidy, and Ashe. And if you take an aggressive angle with like a Cassidy, you have Hinder, you have Rock. It's basically an unstoppable duo. It's more unstoppable than the Mercy and Pharah. If you have them aligned up with an aggressive angle, you can basically shut down any team, any character at any time. The thing that I'll say about Sigma, he's a very linear tank. He likes to fight characters in front of him. He don't likes to look around and chase characters down and like look for him or they come up behind him and stuff. He's a very linear character. So that characters that go like gets behind him and dives past him and dives around him is very annoying for him. I'm talking about characters like Echo, Sombras, Genji, Tracers. All them characters are very annoying to deal with Sigma. But any map that has a linear map, I'm talking about like with payloads, where the geometry of the map is facing in one direction, and you're not worried about being trapped in any space, like in the middle or anywhere where you can be trapped in, you're going to be the best tank to choose in them scenarios. Just make sure that you're properly distancing yourself from characters like it's COVID. You got to keep a safe distance between Junker Queens, Zaryas, and Reinhardts. Remember, you're saving your cooldowns just in case they want to engage. Because if you use your Rock, then you get pinned, and in that case, you fucked up. You need to have your cooldowns to stop those engages. And Sigma in S tier is a very dominant character. Next up is Winston. Winston is a founding father in diving. He's probably one of the best characters in diving. When you have in comp, diving is very good if your whole team's with you. So Kiriko can teleport in to heal you. Sombras can help you. The whole bunch of things that can help you in a dive. In lower ranks, they don't really help you with diving at all. You're basically on your own in that case until you return to them. They won't chase you. They won't help you at all. So you got to go in and go out. But when there's characters that come in with you, like a Lucio, a Tracer, an Echo, or what other case it may be, it bully characters like Cassidy or any long-range characters like Hanzo. If you have your whole team on the same page in diving and your whole team's on board with the diving, it's a very, very good character. But I won't say it's S tier. Winston's a very team-reliant character. He relies on his team. And in that case, I'll put him in A tier. I'll put Winston in A tier. Very reliant on his team to help him out in a dive. Low comp, and I'll say mid comp too. There is not a lot of team communications, teamwork at all until you get to one of the higher ranks. Then your team starts coming together. Your team wants to be more of a part of the dive, and they know what they have to do and what their duty is in a dive. And Winston is very good at denying a Cassidy, a Hanzo, a lot of characters that is shooting from the back and getting a lot of damage and stopping you from pushing in. Next up is Doomfist. Doomfist is in a very, very weird spot. He's in a weird position. It's very, very rough for Doomfist mains. Now with Cassidy becoming meta with his grenade, that is crazy now. You ever play Doomfist and they have a Cassidy, you're basically screwed with the hinder of the grenade, because Doomfist is a very character you go in, go out, go in, go out, go in, go out. A problem is if you can't get out in time. With the hindered ability, you cannot jump out. When you go in to fight a Cassidy or a team with the Cassidy on it and you get hindered, it's basically a death sentence. You might as well jump into a shark pit. With Doomfist, he's a very weak character as of right now. I think Doomfist can take over a lobby if your skill is better than everybody else in that lobby. Doomfist, I'll put him in C. He needs a buff. Anybody that says Doomfist doesn't need a buff, they don't know what they're talking about. He does need a buff. Needs a buff very bad. Doomfist is not a very team character. You can't really help your team out in any way. With like a Reinhardt shield, you can help your team out. A Winston bubble. Junker Queen can take over a damn lobby and push people around. Sigma can put shields up. Hinder a corner, aggressive corners. Very good. Doomfist is, you're basically a solo wolf. You're a lone wolf out there. Doomfist goes in and out by himself and returns by himself. When you dive in, you're leaving your whole team to fight for themselves. So if your DPS, your heals are very good and solid, you have a good chance of winning the game. Thing is with Doomfist, if you play Doomfist, if you want to have a winnable match, you have to play nearly perfect. With a lot of characters on this list, you can make mistakes and still get rewarded for it. With Doomfist, even the slightest mistake, you can lose the game. You can get, your whole team gets squad wiped. It's very punishing, a very punishing character to play if you make a mistake. And the list goes on why Doomfist is really struggling right now. Next up, stepping on the plate, or I should say rolling onto the plate, is Wrecking Ball. Wrecking Ball is a bit of a wild card because there's a lot of characters that can shut him down completely, like a Mei, a Sombra, a Cassidy. If there's a combination like Sombra, Cassidy, and Brig, good luck on winning that game. I'm guaranteed you're going to lose the whole game. And I don't think this season is a very good season for Wrecking Ball where you can like one-trick him and rank up very fast. It's very good to play when you have characters that you're enabling, like a Echo, a Tracer. They're two that I would name that would pair really well with the Ball. If the enemy team is mobilizing to counter you, you better swap off Ball. Because if you play into those things, you're going to get rolled. No pun intended. It's way harder to counter a Wrecking Ball than it is Doom. All those reasons I listed, I'll put Wrecking Ball in B. He's a good character if you're enabling certain characters in comp and that you're willing to swap off when things get difficult. And last but not least is Ramatra. Objectively, he's the best versatility character. And he's like Zarya. He's good at any composition, any map, any matchup, really. One thing I'll say about Ramatra, he gives you a lot of options. On a poke map, you can say Sigma is better. On a brawl map, you can say Junker Queen's way better. But it's not by a huge margin. By any means, it's not a huge gap. You can make up for it depending on how good you are at Ramatra. And I think if you master Ramatra, you don't have to be playing rock, paper, scissors, tank every single game. You don't have to be swapping off the tank every game. You can just play this one character. Ramatra doesn't really got a counter that can really counter him. I think that you can have a positive game, a good game against any character. That he's a very versatility character, very relaxing character to play, very comforting. You're not constantly swapping off the tank to tank to tank. So I'll put him in the S tier with Junker Queen and Sigma. I think Ramatra is probably one of the best tanks to be playing in Season 5. He's still a powerful character. Like Sigma, good for holding aggressive angle. Or you could play Ramatra, which is very good on every map. It seems like he's very good at every map. He's not better than Diva at like high ground, but he's still at average better than every other character at every other map. So if you master him, there's still going to be gaps on certain maps to certain characters depending on who you go against. Depending on how good you are with the character, I think that you can make up for that gap plus some. You could take over a game depending on how you play. This is my Overwatch 2 Season 5 tank comp tier list.